Sony have been having a bit of a rough time of it lately, especially on PC, where it felt like they were actually building some ground, some trust with PC gamers. They released, for instance, Helldivers 2 day one on Steam alongside the PS5. I think one of the first times they've actually done that. It seemed like things were going well, then they totally dropped the ball. They tried to mandate PSN accounts for everyone, means you've got to create a PlayStation account even if you bought the game on Steam. Things didn't go well. PC players, they took a stand, they said, no, we are not having it. Sony had to retreat, and now they've kind of got to rebuild that trust with PC gamers. But even if you speak to people who mainly play on the PS5, I find a lot of those people aren't happy either. Console gamers, they're just not happy in general with this generation. Makes sense for Xbox, they never get anything right. But when it comes to PlayStation, it felt like they'd found the right formula with the PS4. They were releasing a lot of great single-player titles. I even caved, I mainly play on PC, but Bloodborne, that got me. I bought a PS4, I had to play it. But this time around, there's nothing really like that. It feels like that Sony are releasing just less games in general. I know they've really tried to go down the live service pathway. That's had mixed results. For every Helldivers, it feels like there's a fail. Destiny, for instance, doesn't seem to be doing as well as it used to. And that really is now a Sony game. And it just feels like most console players are saying this is one of the worst generations they've ever had. There's been some great third-party releases, Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and so on. But in terms of first-party titles, most of the big companies outside Nintendo seemingly have dropped the ball. It leads us to today, also tomorrow as well. So today there was a PlayStation business update where some details were provided that we'll go into. There's also going to be a state of play tomorrow. Now, I mentioned I'm mainly a PC gamer, so a Sony PlayStation state of play. What does that really mean for me? Well, I want to hear about PC ports. What are they bringing across? But for the console gamers, they might get some new announcements, games to look forward to. That will eventually come to PC. I say eventually because in this business update, Herman Hulst, he is soon to be the co-CEO of Sony's PlayStation business. So he's one of the people taking over from Jim Ryan, who was previously running PlayStation, I believe, and he has addressed day one PC releases. There's been a bit of vagueness around this because obviously Helldivers 2 came to PC day one, and that I don't think had happened before with a PlayStation game. Maybe there's something there I've forgotten about, but it felt like the biggest one. And what a lot of people have kind of said is this the start of every single Sony game releasing on PC day one? Maybe they don't want to do an announcement because it won't sound good to the console players, it'll seem like bad PR, but is that what's happening? PC players are going to get every Sony game on day one going forward. Is that going to be it? Well, apparently not, because Mr. Herman, he said live service games will come day and date on PS5 and PC, so multiplayer titles, gas, whatever you want to call it, but single-player narrative games on PC are designed to then entice PC owners to play the sequels on a PlayStation console. And this isn't really new information. They were saying this like 3-4 years ago about God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn when they first came to PC back in like 2020, 2021. But they're reaffirming this because obviously things change and you can't really trust any of these gaming companies long term. They'll say something and then a week later, if the financial spreadsheet says, no, do something else, they'll very quickly pivot. There's no sort of loyalty. We shouldn't have loyalty to them, but they certainly don't have any loyalty to us. So you've got to really pay attention to what these companies are doing. And they have reaffirmed this. They are saying that the single-player titles, think of your God of War 3, Horizon 3, Spider-Man 3. I keep saying 3, and this is actually a problem for Sony because all of their studios seem to just be making sequels to previous entries, and there's not much originality there, whereas it felt like on the PS4, they were releasing a lot of different sort of games. I know a lot of them were just the open world, felt a bit generic sometimes. I mentioned Bloodborne was thrown in, that felt very different, but at least they were fresh IPs. They're not really doing that now. It all feels a bit samey, and they're charging more money for the games. They're $70 now, so maybe something for Sony to think about. But those narrative single-player titles, they're basically saying, oh, no, they're not coming to PC immediately. It'll take a couple of years for them to get ported across. For now, those sorts of games will be PlayStation exclusive. And I've been thinking about that because their reasoning for it, Herman's reasoning, is that what we want to do is we want to make sure the live service titles, they get the biggest audience as possible, because that's good for PlayStation players. There's more people playing the game, whether they are on their PS5 or they are on PC. It's good for everyone. But for the single-player titles, what our goal is that they release day one on PS5, they release a bit later on PC, and then the PC players who enjoy them, they go, oh, we'll buy a PS5 now so we can play whatever the sequel is day one next time on the PlayStation. That is their reasoning. They said it 4 years ago, and they're saying it again now. I don't think I believe them. It just sounds stupid. It doesn't sound like that is actually happening. I'd want to see some stats that actually show that, hey, somehow, maybe because we all have to make PSN accounts now, maybe they can track someone bought a game on Steam, now they've actually gone to the PlayStation later and started buying games. I don't really believe that that's happening a whole lot outside sort of a handful, a very small statistic. What I really think is their motivation for this is they are shit scared about losing PlayStation players to PC. They're worried that people who are integrated into PlayStation's ecosystem today, they see more games going to PC, and they go, fuck this, it's pretty clear that PlayStation doesn't care about us as much anymore. They're wanting to get all that money from PC, they want to have their cake and eat it too. I'm just going to sell the PlayStation, I'm going to move over to PC, move over to Steam, and I can play everything. I can play Xbox games, I can play the PlayStation games as well. So their last line of defense, essentially, is protecting those single-player games. They're going, nope, you have to have a PS5 to play these games. Now, I'll be honest, as a PC player, I might be a little bit biased like many of us are. I would simply love that every PlayStation game comes to PC. I think it's the most consumer-friendly decision, at least in the short term. We can choose where to play our games. If we prefer a console, if we find that to be simpler, that's fine. Or I can play on PC where I maybe have more choice on my setup and all of those sorts of things. I say there's some nuance there because I do understand that if we enter an age where every single PlayStation game, every single Xbox game, they're just being put on every platform essentially, if that happens, maybe that means we get less of those single-player games because those companies decide, well, now that we're going everywhere, no one's buying our console specifically for certain games that we've locked down into our ecosystem. Well, then maybe we're just going to focus entirely on every single game having to make as much money as possible. Therefore, just about everything is a live service. Every game's got microtransaction, that's it. It's certainly a fair argument. I don't want to go into all of it right now. I'll just say that I'm not necessarily saying all exclusives are definitely bad and that's it. I think there is a conversation to be had there. But just in terms of the motivation, PlayStation are the ones who are saying that they're doing this to try and entice PC players across. I think it's a bad message. All it does is annoy PC gamers, and you've annoyed them enough. PC players are understandably sick of Sony right now because they clearly need and want our money. They've talked about that. Games are really expensive to make. We need the PC now. That's very clear, but they still verbally and in their actions treat us like second-class citizens. And I just feel that strategy, it's going a bit too far in that direction of pissing people off. I feel like they can just keep releasing games later on PC, but they don't need to actually say, oh, the reason we're doing this is to try and get you to buy a PlayStation. It doesn't sound good, and PC players, they recognize the companies that don't have PC gamers' best interests in mind. An example is Epic Games. They have been awful to PC gamers for a long time. If you look at the 2000s, for instance, late 2000s, early 2010s, they abandoned PC gaming. They went all in on the Xbox with Gears of War, and they pretty much said PC gaming is basically dead. It was actually Valve who stuck by PC gaming. They created Steam, and they really invested in the PC market. They saw that future. Even when the going was tough, they went in on it, and they supported PC gaming. It absolutely paid off for them, and then Epic Games came crawling back with the Epic Store and said, hey, fellow kids, hey, PC gamers, remember us? Do you want to buy on our store as well? So many benefits. We all gave them the middle finger and said, no, you didn't care about PC gaming. You've crawled over here when it's finally been lucrative. See you later, we're not interested. And again, the Helldivers stuff. PC players showed they weren't having that sort of nonsense. I don't think Sony expected it. They've been getting away with things like a monthly sub for online play, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's not going to fly on PC, and I think part of it is because Steam is quite pro-customer, and PC players are used to that sort of experience. They're not going to have any of this anti-consumer stuff from Sony, so they're just going to have to get used to that. But it is really just about Sony's messaging. If you want to release games on PC late, whatever, do what you want to do. I'm probably going to wait for a sale even when you do release them. I'm not buying Spider-Man 2 for full price or whatever. I'm going to wait. I'm sure many people will do the same. But if you want to do that, you need to at least respect that people are gaming on PC because they want to. Don't talk about trying to convince them to go onto a PS5. It's not going to work very well for you. And they're never consistent anyway, because if we look back at some old tweets, for instance, this is Insomniac, an exchange with Insomniac Games. Someone asks, come on, Spidey, come on PC. And that was back in 2020. This was about the first PS4 Spider-Man game. Insomniac actually responded and said it's exclusive to PlayStation, so it won't be coming to PC, and then a bit of an advertisement for PS Now, which was like a streaming service, I believe, which you could potentially use on PC. Probably not very good, especially here in Australia, where the internet's dog shit. That would never work, I imagine. But they very firmly said they weren't going to be putting it on PC, and that obviously changed like a couple of years later. So it's a clear example of Mr. Herman might be saying this today, yet right now in 2024, we're not going to be putting single-player games on PC day one. This could change tomorrow. The second that's inconvenient for them, or financially it's too big of a problem, these games will be coming to PC. So it is something to think about. Just because he said this doesn't mean it's done, and that's it, case closed. This could definitely change. If we look at what Sony are actually doing too, this visual was part of the business update they just did, and basically Sony reveals categories focus for first-party studios that they own. If we actually have a look at this, not that many of their studios are actually committed or focused on single-player, narrative-focused titles. So we can see some of them here up the top. There's Insomniac, so again, Spider-Man, Santa Monica Studio for God of War, Naughty Dog. When are they going to release a game? It's been years. But it does feel like in the past, they had a lot more teams working on single-player. We also know that Square Enix doing Final Fantasy, those are no longer going to be exclusive to the PS5. They've said, no, we're going full multi-platform, we're putting everything on PC day one as well, so not even a lot to look forward to. If they are putting some games on PS5 day one, it's realistically only a handful, because most of these studios now, it takes like 6 years for them to make a game, so you're talking about one game per team per console pretty much. And there's about 6-7 studios here focused on single player, so what is that, like one game a year? That's going to be PS5 exclusive. Maybe a couple of these. Under this, we've got Evolving Multi-Genre, which is probably teams working on maybe both live service and single player, or maybe they previously worked on single player and they're transitioning to live service. That could be happening as well. You've got the Horizon Zero Dawn studio. I think they've been talking about a live service. Ben's studio, they made, I think, Days Gone, and then a potential Days Gone 2 got shot down by executives. What are they doing? Probably a live service or something. So this is really something to keep in mind. Even if some games are coming to PS5 and that's it at the start, it's only really a handful, and I'm not sure if that's really going to work for Sony. If you're talking about one game a year pretty much that you lock down, is that going to be really enough to get enough people to come into the ecosystem, purchase a PS5 just for those handful of games? I don't really think so. I have acknowledged that exclusivity I get that it can be a good thing for us as gamers too, given that it might mean that these companies have to make something of quality for that to matter. No one's going to buy the console for the exclusive if it sucks, if it's just yet another live service that we've seen a million times. So it can be good, but just seeing where the industry is going, I don't really think any of these companies outside Nintendo are going to stick by exclusivity. Xbox are floundering, they're porting everything everywhere. All their games seemingly are coming to PS5. Even Starfield, it looks like. It doesn't sound like that's far away according to rumors. I think Sony won't be too far away. So if you are a PC gamer, I think you'll see all of these games on PC day one in the not too distant future. It's just going to be a question of, is this always going to be a good thing? Will we get the same quality of games? That is sometimes questionable even right now. But are we going to see even more live services, more monetization? Because the games are everywhere, and no longer is someone going to buy like a console for an exclusive game. That's probably something to think about. But in the meantime, we'll see what happens tomorrow with the showcase, more PC ports. I'm sure there'll be some announcements and so on. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.